There are too many of me and Mom.
I don't think nearly enough of you and your mom.
Patty, we're waiting for you. Where were you?
I was in the bathroom.
Does Patch have a,
Yes, she does.
We're all here.
Thanks, Eddie.
Oh, easy, easy there. All right, on behalf of the family of Eileen Teresa Walsh-Keys, who will include, of course, Stephen, number one, and Dara and Eddie, that's me, Terry and Kenan, Janine, Lisa, Tommy, and then all of the blood relatives who have come from her and from as part of our family and the extended family, and thank you everyone for joining us, both those who are married to our family and those who are part of our extended circle. Cheers to the life and the love and the laughter of this dear, sweet person who gave us a lot of joy and a lot of happiness and gave us our life. And your mom, remember, as Stevie said, is your first love. So here's to our first love. So God bless. God bless Eileen. Cheers. Salud to everybody.
Joe and Katie, remember that.
I'm not making her a slideshow.
Always, believe it or not, but it should be. It should be about it. At this point, I'd like to introduce Terry and Stephen, who are going to do a tag team.
act.
So please go ahead and
Bring your dad.
The Irish horse. Yes.
The Irish horse kazoo. Remember,
you
Mom?
might want to get this on video. This will go viral, I think.
God, what a funny day. Now, I've thought about this day for most of my life. The day my mother leaves. It's like, oh, that's fun. Yeah, so I would never know until it actually happened. And now it happens. And honestly, I haven't cried yet because I'm actually glad that she got to leave that prison that she was in, her body. Not a good place to be. And I'm glad for her. I still feel so connected to her. I think tears are in the future when I get connected with emotions, but with pictures or whatever it will be, what the catalyst will be. I'm ever thankful. I really feel fortunate to have come through her as part of my karma. To have Eileen as my mother, where all of us, we all feel this way, I know. We are lucky, lucky. So, to life, you guys, we all come and we all go this way, and this was Mom's turn. We all have this moment and our appreciation for Eileen. Cheers to her.
Salud, salud.
Cheers.
She's right here with us.
I would like to just say a few things about Mom. Watching Janine's presentation there, from the beginning of seeing Mom as a child and as a young adult, through her life, I just sat with this smile and this warmth and this, like, remembering all the different aspects of her vivacity, her fun, her sweetness, her stubborn Irish meekness included. But what got me most emotional was watching her after Dad's passing. Once she had to come back here and came back here, and at her most vulnerable, that's when I started getting emotional. It was very interesting. And I realized with her passing, I thought it was going to be a matter of, yeah, she's released from this. And it would be that simple, but it really wasn't that simple. Of course, there's the finality of a life ending that it always strikes us as humans, but then her passing gave me this opportunity to stop looking at her as she's been over just the last couple of years and see the totality of her life and her contribution to people. And I realized the role that she had played in my life, in the formation of who I am, and like some of my ways of being I got from Mom, ways that she never like hit you over the head with a lesson she wanted you to learn. You know, it was like, I remember one time being in a car when she was driving us home, and I was bad-mouthing some family at grammar school or something.
I remember
and
that.
she just said, yeah, because they were your friends. And Mom was like, I'm really disappointed in you. I'm like, I was like 13. I'm like, what? She's like, I'm so disappointed. There's no need for you to be talking about them that way. That's unkind. And I was belligerent because I was 13 and didn't want to hear it from my mother. But it landed on me about the idea of kindness and about bad talking people for no necessary reason. And she did other things like that that really shaped me and molded me. And this role that she played. But when I would go to Cedar Manor and sit by her, especially when it wasn't more than, when it wasn't a group of us, and she couldn't hear out of one ear, her eyesight was really bad, and I'd sit on one side of her and just get this sense of the totality of who she was. Even though in this state, she could hardly see, she could not talk, she didn't really understand what we were saying anymore. But here was Eileen, Teresa, Walsh, Keys, this woman who had made such an impact on all of our lives. And she gave me the opportunity to be her caretaker. I'm not a parent, and I realized that was like this gift. It was a blessing back to me in this odd way. And I think as we went through this time period of her going through all this, we never mourned while it was happening. We acknowledged that we were losing her, but we never mourned it. And I finally got to not just mourn her passing, but mourn what she had to go through. And I think that's the vulnerability I'm seeing on Janine's thing. It's like that vulnerability. She needs help. She needs help to live, to walk, to do this, to do that. And so here's to the roles that our parents play for us, how they mold and shape it, the roles we end up playing for the Mom's influence on me influences the way I treat my family, my friends, my students. She lives on through me. And when she came back from California, we were in the kitchen of our apartment alone for the first time, and she took me by the shoulders and she said, "Thank you." It was like a summary of convincing her to come back. And now she was back in New York. But it seemed like a thank you for what was going to happen over the next 9 years, really. And I got to experience Eileen as a roommate, and she went through a lot of really hard things. She was a character, and she was warm, and I'd come from work, and she's standing at the top of the stairs in the apartment, up the stairs with a glass of wine, and she smiled. She was like the best roommate you could have.
Except when she was throwing air conditioners outside the
air conditioners in our apartment, and came home and the air conditioners were not in the windows. And I thought, what the heck happened here? And I went down to the super and I'm like, did anyone come upstairs? And they're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I said, well, our air conditioners are out. And they all gather at the bottom of the stairs and we're looking up the stairs and Mom's like, no, I did it. I took the air because it started raining. Mom, you can leave air conditioners in, but we're looking at a little woman who's like,
She never knew, she never had one.
Let's take the air conditioner. Extraordinary.
She never had an air conditioner before, I don't think. True. And she hated air conditioners, actually.
Oh, they made such a noise in the air conditioner when it rained.
But
she was great at thanking people. She would thank the sous chef for the great ham and cheese sandwich before she left the restaurant. Whatever.
Yeah.
Waitresses loved her. Oh, she loved
She wanted to
the
empower
waitresses.
everybody.
And she did.
When we were at the nursing home and all that the nurses and aides saw were Mom with dementia, not being able to talk and getting agitated sometimes. And so we had pictures of it. It's like this woman was so much more than what you're seeing right now. And she thanked me, but I thank her for her lifetime and her influence and her love and her values and what she allowed me to do for her and became and grew because of that. So thank you.
I'm just going to throw in some things and anyone feel free. Like, okay, so Terry, she got you in the car saying that wasn't, right, and attitude, and she told me in 8th grade I was a bitch, and I totally deserved it, totally. And she always said, you know, okay, I've changed since then. All right, I have. So, okay. He's not ready to work.
Very quiet over
But no, she would say, you have to look at, you know, you have to give credit to people for trying. You never know what someone is going through. So just to grandparent on to what you're saying about be kind. So she would say, you know, you need to give people credit. They're trying. So that always sticks with me. But in terms of becoming her and how I relate to my middle school students, ages 11 to 14, I am so mom. Oh my God. I have to watch myself. Because back then you could hit somebody on the top of the head, you know. But now you can't, you know. You can't do that. So I'm like, oh, so you can't read my directions.
Where does this go?
You know, I'm like a church lady. But anyway, no, I feel like, you know, she totally has influenced how we are.
And her compassionate nature. I remember one time there was somebody in the school or something. I was still like 14 years old who needed some kind of help, and she's like, "Well, did you call and offer help?" I'm like, "Well, no, I didn't." She said, "Well, you know, think about that." So I did what she said. I called and offered. They were like, "Oh no, everything's taken care of." But thank you so much for calling. I can't tell you how appreciative we are of your call. And I told Mom, and she stood there smiling like, feels good, man. she was like, I would just like to share two funny stories about Mom. This is her resourcefulness. One was a Halloween story, you know, on Neptune Avenue. Mom, everybody knew Mom. She was the gym teacher at our grammar school, for those who don't know. She was substitute teacher. She worked in the parish. A lot of people knew Mrs. Keys.
There's a prop. Oh, that's a
No.
That too.
No, crap, that was the choreography.
Yes.
Yes, right. So, what this stuff is. Okay.
Is that the
So anyway, the point is, it was
Okay.
Halloween, and Mom would create, you know, what all mothers do, and she had popcorn in bags, but so many people kept coming, and she was like throwing things into bags, and, oh, hi, dear, and she'd always say hello, hi, Mrs. Keys, oh, look at you, you're Batman, or whatever. Well, she realized that she ran out of stuff. There was no more candy. Oh, thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
Punchline here. There was no more candy, there was no more popcorn, there were no change. So some kids would come over to the door, hi, Mrs. Keys, trick or treat. And she'd put her hand into a bag and go, wow, Lori, look at you. You look wonderful. And as they're looking up at her, she'd put her hand in their bag and go like this. And John would go, okay, have a good night. It was good to see you. Nothing. It was magic. It was like this. Oh, Mrs. Keys. She's great. The other resourceful story about her is what she used to substitute teacher in our grammar school. Any subject they needed her for, but she was a creative person, you know. So I come into 7th grade into my science class, and the teacher was never out. And we were at these kind of tables when they started doing this. No, it was Miss Smith. Thank you. We were at this long table. We walk in, and Mom is standing at the front of the room in a dress. She's the substitute teacher. Now, I start smirking because I know she doesn't know anything about science. At all. Nothing about science. So I'm keeping it to myself, like she would do. We're sitting down, and now she knew that Miss Smith left her go over chapter 12, pages, da-da-da-da-da. And so she said, okay, students, I'm substituting for Miss Smith. Turn open it. Mrs. Keys, Mrs. Keys, Mrs. Keys. Yes. She says, I wanted to ask you a question. He asked her a science question. Now I'm looking at Mom. Mom goes, who thinks they know the answer to it? Either guy over here. Robbie, yes. And he goes, well, I think it's good. Very good, Robbie. Page 52. And she was so smooth.
Oh, man.
And hence the apple does not fall far.
It was kind of like a dance move, really.
And I was telling you, she was a lovely, warm person. She was very smart. She could apply her intellect to things when she really needed to. She was a teacher. They asked her to create this home economics class at St. Gabriel's. But she could do home economics, although she had 7 maids, she always said. She could do home economics, but how do you make it into classes? And I'm sitting at that seat in the dining room, in the kitchen. Everyone knows Mom's sitting at that far seat in the kitchen. With her
coffee.
Working stuff out.
Who said
But
that?
one of the other things I remember, and Trisha, we thought you'd appreciate this, we were doing Fiddler on the Roof shortly after it left Broadway. And when you did Fiddler, you had to do the original choreography. There's a book that comes out that's like this thick, and you've seen it too, right, Mike? And Mom was like so invested in getting it right, and she did. I mean, when she applied her brain to something, she was like a laser with it. And I was always appreciate that well-rounded nature of who she was. And one other story I just want to share is when I was a kid watching television, and I must have been like around Emmy's age, a car pulls into our driveway out of nowhere, and a man had a heart attack in the car, and his wife pulled the car into the driveway. Mom goes out, and she, like, immediately, what do you need, what can I do, who can I call? She's taking blankets from the living room, bringing it out. Again, exemplifying help whoever needs it. Compassion and empathy, and do what needs to be done in that moment. She was that role model. And she continued to do that. The times at the nursing home, when she didn't do this really, she might have done it twice. I came over to her, and she recognized who I was, and took my hand, my face, with her 2 hands, that she was able to still exude that love when she could, because other times she couldn't exhibit it or demonstrate it, but when she could, just taking my hand, my face in her hands like that was just, that was like a treasure.
I think Steve can relate to the,
Oh, yeah,
your hands around her face in August.
Last August, it was the last time I was here. I can't say that I know she recognized me. I'm her firstborn, I'm her oldest child. So I don't take it personally. I know where she's in. She didn't sign up for this. And there she is. And but as I got closer and was hanging out with her, there was an intimacy, something that she recognized about me and my sincerity. I mean, when we just had the same DNA. And she was looking at me, not knowing who I was, but feeling who I was, what I was. And there's a picture of this, and there's a 1-minute video that Janine took of that, which is amazing to me.
Through the time that she was at Cedar Manor, as her dementia got worse, people would come to visit. I mean, aside from us, of course, doing this exact same thing, but Paul did the same thing, sat right up with her, holding her hand, and just exuding this love. Kate and Emma came last year, and it was Emma's idea, right, to go to Cedar Manor. And the whole family, the Mark family came. And Kate said, and I've repeated this over this years with people, that she sat with Mom, and just as Steve said, Kate said, I didn't get that she really knew who I was. She just knew that I was her people. We were her people. And so she was so, she absorbed, that's the other thing. It became the language she couldn't really hear or understand after a while and couldn't speak. It was the language of affection that made the most difference with her. And you guys exuded it, and that's the same kind of thing. And Paul's done it too, and other people who have visited her, of course, our family.
Hey, and Trevor, please.
Oh, yes.
This guy.
Trevor was like a
Mom
son.
loved this guy.
He's part of the family.
Mom choreographed Trevor from Music Man, and then we tried to sing
Trevor loved that story.
It's the secret. So
She learned that trick from Trevor.
that's right.
My mom knew a lot of people in this room. Cousin Eddie Walsh right here since the time he was a little guy. Friends of mine like Chris Spooner became part of the family over time in our teenage years. Pat, she loved Pat and Patty. She helped make Pat's wedding dress. They were good friends. I mean, there's so many different spheres of love and relationships.
Can I mention something? Can you please speak about Ed, Papa Keys, Daddy Keys, and Ed and Eileen's relationship? It's the most beautiful thing.
Would Eddie want to say anything?
Eddie?
Yeah, most definitely.
Your mom and her love for your dad.
Well, somebody said earlier, I think it was Cousin Eddie who said, the two of them were like best friends. And even in their 70s, they used to hold hands and walk down to wherever together and have their margaritas.
Yes, they
and,
did.
even though it was Tuesday morning, it was okay.
It was 12 o'clock somewhere.
With all these hoodlums they had to raise, with, but
But
you
you
know,
taught
Dad-
them how to raise the
right,
kids,
and
right?
I-
Yeah.
What I wanted to make sure everybody knew
I mean,
was
you're
that
robbing your own
Sorry, sorry.
Dad and Ed and Eileen were really good friends together, and they did so much together, and they kind of both grew up out of the Bronx together, you know. So they were raised in families that both kind of met in college, I guess, and then as they went on, and of course they at
Is that where they
Fordham,
met? They met at Fordham?
at Fordham,
And
right?
where were they
And so-
from in the Bronx?
Arthur Avenue area?
They
Arthur
were both
Ave and
from Arthur
Valentine
Ave?
Ave.
No, they weren't.
No,
in
Dad.
particular
No,
areas.
that's
So-
What, Valentine?
Valentine.
No, but he was, no.
No, Arthur's Italian.
So once
That's where Barbara
once they
Stevens
started to
was.
have children, and then they had Stephen, and they had Dara, and then of course then they had me. And the big thing was,
Then all my thunder was gone. My juju was
I
gone.
think we all understand that I was probably the favorite of the kids. I think that's understood by all of us here.
I wasn't actually saying that.
So, but Mom and I had a relationship, and even when I was first born, she asked me to please help out with these kids because there was trouble brewing, you know, and she kind of knew what was going to happen later. I don't know how she knew this, but it's kooky about that. But not that she actually said I was her favorite, but I could glean it, you know. She and I had a nonverbal thing, you know. So when she said, "Get out of there," I realized that
Mom and Dad.
she meant watch out for Jimmy, watch out for Lisa, watch out for Tommy. But anyway, so Mom and Dad, yeah, they were great together. But anyway, as I kept trying to help these kids, and there was so much trouble growing everywhere in the Keys family, I had to put my foot down and let people know that, you know, Dad was one thing, but Mom and I were trying to help raise a good family here. And so there wasn't an issue about who was in charge. No? Oh yeah, exactly. Okay,
Is this what you were looking for?
so Patty, I'm answering the question because
I think you went off on a tangent.
a tangent can come back around to the other side. The important thing is that we're all here, and that you know, Mom left me explicit directions upon her demise that I'm to tell you each what you are to do. So see me afterwards, and there are some very explicit directions. So more than that. Tangent coming around. Anybody else? Does anybody else have a comment?
I just want to say one thing in terms of thank you so much for that. You can have a seat.
I'm not done. I got 45 minutes of material left. Tell them we only have room till 11, Ted. I'm not done.
Somebody get his agent on the phone.
Get the hook.
Wait, no, check. You know, by the time Dad passed, they had
We have
indeed
another
become
service in 2 weeks.
his best of friends, and they were so. There's a great picture of Mom napping on the sofa, and Dad had been sitting, and so he's ended up napping on her stomach.
You do that every night.
It was very, very. Lisa took that picture actually. They did. But prior to that, after married 50 years, extraordinary 50-year marriage. But there were rocky times. But the fact is, they got through it. But I want to say one thing about Mom. Yeah, she was one of the first women to get a bachelor's degree at Fordham University. And she was a woman of her time and yet ahead of her time. Like she was her mother's daughter in terms of roles and stuff, but she also wanted to take her own stand with things. Dad would have preferred for her to like stay home all the time, but she was choreographing shows at the prep, she was teaching at Blessed Sacrament, she was doing this. She wanted to go out and do these things, even though sometimes he griped about it.
Oh, he wanted
But
dinner on the
she-
table
you know,
at
it
6
was-
o'clock.
yeah,
and
right.
She somehow did it. I don't know.
And it was the women's movement was coming in, and she was still her mother's daughter, and yet going in that direction as well. And I remember times of her standing up to him if he ever got grumpy and grouchy. Those of you who remember him from Narrowshot?
Dad getting right.
And she was on her own, and she never made a scene of it, but she would take a stand with him, like, relax, you know, you're picking on them now, take it easy. And I really admired the strength in her that she had to do that. She also relied on it tremendously, too.
When I was part of the Woodstock generation, and I still am, and I was 18, I remember she and I would have great conversations, and she said to me one time, you know, if I was your age, I would be a hippie too. That's who she was, that's how she thought of herself.
I recall Dad saying at their 50th in Mexico that and it's on tape. The stay with itness. That was the word that he surmised up there. You know, part of their 50 years together was you have to have that. We had that stay with itness. Most young couples today, they don't have that. You know, and that's the reason they lasted so long, because they were devoted and committed to staying. Having that stay with it.
That's a new word in the dictionary now. It's got their picture.
Would anybody else like to say anything about Eileen?
I just want to give a thanks. This isn't a funny story. It's not even a story. It's a thanks to my mother for making me the woman that I am today. And sometimes I'd like to kill her, because the decision I make is like, God, I would be so farther ahead in my life if I didn't have this, you know.
All these kids.
All these kids. But it's definitely a thank you, and also that she lives on through all of her children. So remember that she lives on through us, and as we continue to, she's with us and lives on us, and that's what I want to say.
Here, here.
You know, I have to say, for me, I had so many nice conversations waiting for Terry to wake up. Because I wasn't allowed to go upstairs to wake you up.
Say who you are and how you
Oh, hi, my name is Dory. For those of you who don't know.
And here's the story.
And my Dory. So we would sit in the kitchen and she'd have her coffee and I'd have my cup of tea and we would just chat. And I remember one day she was making sandwiches and was down to the bottom of the jar and took the spatula and scraped the jar with it. And I was like, wow, why are you doing that? She's like, do you know how many mouths I have to feed in this house? I was like, there's no letting food go to waste. To this day, I still scrape my things with the spatula, taught my kids to do it, and I'm like, hey, good to the last drop. It's good to the last bite. Because, you know, I need to go. So trust me. And you know what? I just, her, that smile, the warmest hugs, you know, she was just such a wonderful woman, and I just feel so lucky that I got to know her and was blessed to have her in my life.
She was so open and interested in our friends. And I remember being in high school and having people stay over, and when I woke up and they weren't there, I would find them sitting at the kitchen table talking to Mom. Speaking of sandwiches, I have to tell you this story. I was a junior, some of you know this, I was a junior in high school, okay? And every night Mom would make us lunch. And there were how many of us? I don't know if Tommy was in school.
She made 24 sandwiches a night.
She would be like, bread, 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 bread. Slap of bologna, slap of bologna, slap of bologna, slap of bologna, slap of bologna. Mustard, mayonnaise. I'm like, Mom, you're like a
machine.
Factory here, like a machine. There's no
There's
she's
no
like, well, I
feeling.
have to make all this for everybody. I'm like, but, you know, there's no feeling in what you're doing. You're just like slap, 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 slap. You put it together and you're putting them into bags. No feeling. I did. So she says, no. Okay. She doesn't say anything. Doesn't say anything.
Doesn't say a word.
The next day, I am eating my lunch, and it is a bologna sandwich with the kind of dressing that I want on it. I'm eating the sandwich, all of a sudden I'm like, what is this? And I'm realizing there's a piece of paper in the sandwich. I take out the paper, and it says, feeling. You want feeling in your sandwich? I went home and told her, and she just smiled.
I was going to tell him if he didn't, but he
Tell the better. All those kids that remembered who liked the mayonnaise, who liked the mustard, who liked the blend, who liked the... Talk about feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was subtle yet
Even
festive.
though it was like day to day, you take care of things. One time, Trevor loves this story. One time I was by myself in the living room near where the fireplace was, and she comes walking out of the kitchen, and she's got her purse, so that means that she's leaving. And she's walking out, heading toward the front door. I said, Ma, where are you going? She said, to the supermarket. I said, can I come? She said, no kids.
But you were 36 at the time.
Oh. All right, so Dara reminds me of this story. Lisa was a little girl, and was doing show and tell at school. Sorry, this is too funny a story. Show and tell at school. And so she asked Mom, can I bring all these little Irish figurines to school? And Lisa was a little character.
It was like, Irish flatware for...
Oh, okay.
Senior
But
fart.
porcelain and
Senior
all
fart.
that kind of stuff, right? Nana Walsh, Mom's mother, said, don't let her take it. Don't let her take it. And Mom's like, no, I think we should trust her. This is fine. We should let, Lisa take these. Well, Lisa took them to school, and on her way home, Lisa was swinging the bag, walking home, whatever way she was doing it. She brings the bag back, and there are chips and broken things and all this stuff. And the worst thing for Mom was that her mother was right. We were in the kitchen, and Mom starts saying, Lisa's like, I'm sorry, you're sorry, that's fine. Mom starts throwing the things. You're sorry, look at this, look at that. We were all like, oh my God, Mom is freaking out.
Because Nana was saying, I told you.
That's exactly why she, right. So we go into the living room, and we all pick up something. So when Mom, a plate or an ashtray or something that's in the living room, so when Mom comes into the living room for the first time, we all go, take this one. And she just stopped and laughed. That's when she realized what she had done. She was multifaceted.
Well, it was always a heaven in our family because we had the older three to take care of the younger ones. Dara, of course, Dara was the smartest of the oldest of all of us, and she would know what the answers to our questions were before we even said them. It's like, Dara, do you know where it's behind the couch? Dara, how much is it? If you square root it by 3, you'll find out. Now go away, because this is the smartest kid in the world. But she was
Smartest one in the family.
Smartest one in the family.
Right, she was also cursed to have been a twin of mine. In college, we were called twins by my mother. That was a better deal for me than it was for her, obviously. Because here's this beautiful woman I'm a twin with. Hey, great. But here I am with a scraggly beard and scars and big glasses and ugly hair. I like an ogre.
Quasimodo, yeah.
All right, but now Stephen was another issue completely because he was the top guy. I mean, he was the top dog in our family, and so he ruled the family. This is important for everybody to know.
Oh yeah,
And some of these stories are the first time anybody's hearing them. Now he was so tough on us that after he beat us up a couple of times, we were so afraid of him that he would make us beat each other up. Because then he didn't have to do any of the work. And you know that's true. I remember Brother Tommy in a laundry bag over the railing, waving him like this, and Tommy, years later, whenever he showed our laundry bag, he'd be like, "Ah! No!"
It was a mesh laundry bag. He could see through it. He loved being in that bag. You have to take my word for this. He used to ask to be in the bag.
Except every time he saw mesh thereafter as an adult, he screamed.
He was traumatized. Well, that's the price you pay for liking mesh.
So now I understand why when I first met Steve when I was like 16, he said, "So you want to come over and beat up my brothers and sisters?"
Right, did you?
No.
I got a whole slew of them, come on.
I don't know about your pick. I counted 7 times that Stephen has reminded us he's the first one. 7? First one, by the way, first one.
People forget.
I'm not keeping track, it just happened. 7.
People forget. They need reminding.
No one forgets. No one's forgotten. Why did we have to have all these kids?
Well, tomorrow in Suffern, where I'm from, they're having the movie at the Lafayette Theater, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, sweet.
I think
That's
the ripple
right,
effect of George Bailey, obviously, is pretty evident by...
That's right.
Yeah, what would life have been like?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The George Bailey.
Exactly.
Or any of us.
I don't know if we'd know how to shuffle up to Buffalo.
Thank you, Eileen.
That was not just channeling through me. I can't help it. You wouldn't.
When Janine and I used to go to Rita Curry dance studio, and we both had dance class on Thursdays. We were in like the top 2 classes that like had the hardest tap steps. So when we got home, Mom would always, we go in the kitchen and we still had our tap shoes on, and Mom would be like, "Show me the steps you learned today." Remember that, Janina? We used to really hard tap steps, and she'd always like be trying to learn them from us. And that was like so cool that she, you know, and she praised us for how well we were doing it and how quickly we learned it. And that was one thing about her. She always made you feel better about yourself than you would have otherwise, and she encouraged you.
Yeah, it's true.
To think better of yourself. Be better.
Very good point. Oh, okay. So Terry would take my friends away all the time. We were like playing out on the
bring it all out on the table. In nets. When she's playing with them, I used to throw a net over them.
He's like, all my friends, he's like taking
Is
all
that
the
mesh
girls,
bag? No.
Everybody was going to play with
Different.
Terry because Terry's so creative. And so Mom, I go running in, Mom, Terry took my friends again. She goes, read a book. That's her answer. My brother takes my friends.
That's right. Read a book. Read a book.
So of course, I am my mother, so I told my kids, if you ever have a problem, just read a book.
So that's why you're always reading a book.
Or if you were bored on a summer day and went up to your mom, I'm so bored, I'm so bored, go read a book. That was her answer.
So her kids are the most well-read kids
Very
around.
well read. Very
I
well.
wonder why.
Last sentiment.
Yeah.
Go, Trisha, go.
I can't talk about her because I will lose it. So
I know.
I just want to say that the best thing I ever heard was when we come into this world, we're hysterical crying, and everyone around us is laughing and smiling because they're so happy. And then when we go out, everyone around us is crying, but they're happy. We're happy.
We're happy.
Yeah.
And the best thing I could ever think is that when everyone around you is crying, must have meant you had an amazing life.
Right.
So,
Right.
Nice. Well said.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.